Breaking news today. The ice has been broken, but Lula and Zelensky are sticking to their positions with regard to Russia. The first meeting between the presidents of Brazil and Ukraine took place in New York. Both leaders stressed the need to continue down peaceful paths and keep the dialogue open during the United Nations summit. This week, Presidents Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva of Brazil and Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine met for the first time since their respective countries' recent disagreements over Brazil's stance on the Russian offensive. Both leaders met for the first time since the failed attempt in Japan and subsequent mutual accusations at the United Nations General Assembly in New York. Breaking the ice, we had a great conversation about the significance of pathways to peace and the necessity of keeping an open dialogue between our countries, Lula wrote on social media. Zelensky, for his part, claimed to have had an important meeting with his Brazilian counterpart, adding, "After our discussion, we instructed our diplomatic teams to work on the next steps in our bilateral relationships and peace efforts." During the meeting, Lula confirmed that his special advisor and ex-chancellor, Celso Amorim, would be attending the Copenhagen process for negotiating a peace agreement between Russia and Ukraine. The meeting, according to the minister Mauro Vieira, took place in a calm and friendly atmosphere, in which information was exchanged about each country and the situation the world is experiencing at the present time. Vieira recalled that Brazil maintains communication with President Vladimir Putin's administration and will soon meet with his Russian counterpart, Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba said after the meeting, "Can use the less than diplomatic phrase, break the ice. There was no Cold War between our countries, but the atmosphere was cordial and forthright. In my opinion, both presidents have a better grasp of the other's position now." Circular travel. After 4 months of missed opportunities and mutual accusations, the governments of Brasilia and Kiev found common ground at the United Nations General Assembly in New York. After the Brazilian president accused his Ukrainian counterpart of not wanting to seek peace, the Russian president was also criticized by his counterpart, Vladimir Putin. In May, Zelensky attempted to meet with Lula at the G7 summit in Japan, but the Brazilian government claimed that the Ukrainian prime minister arrived late and missed their scheduled meeting. Despite several suggestions from Lula, a group of neutral countries has yet to be formed to negotiate a peace agreement between Russia and Ukraine. The leftist leader condemned Russia's military invasion of Ukraine but rejected the delivery of weapons to the country, unlike the United States and the European Union. The Brazilian president has already hinted that Ukraine should give up Crimea, the Ukrainian peninsula that Russia annexed in 2014. However, Zelensky has stated on multiple occasions that the Ukrainian conflict began and will end in Crimea. After last week's G20 summit in India, Lula said he was willing to host Putin in Brazil despite a capture warrant request from the International Court in La Haye. Lula said at the time that Brazil should re-evaluate its continued membership because major powers like China and the United States do not want to take part in the forum because of its authority over poorer nations. Lula made the most of his time at the United Nations by holding a series of meetings with other world leaders. U.S. Vice President Joe Biden met with his Brazilian counterpart Lula da Silva before their scheduled meeting with the Ukrainian leader. A joint manifesto arguing for the need to put workers at the center of policy decisions was then released. Lula claims the agreement is part of a renaissance in ties between the two countries. Meanwhile, Zelensky met with his Chilean counterpart, Gabriel Boric, to discuss the prospect of organizing a summit between Ukraine and Latin American countries in an effort to foster greater rapprochement. In a post on social network X, Zelensky expressed gratitude to Chile for its support of Ukraine and its consistent condemnation of Russian aggression. During the meeting, both heads of state advocated for greater bilateral coordination between their countries. Boric was invited by Zelensky to actively participate in the implementation of Ukraine's proposed formula de paz to end the Russian invasion. Boric promised Zelensky, count with our government in the call to stop this unjust aggression.